Thank you. Yeah, welcome. And this session is Symposium 2. I'm sorry, we modified the program, okay? So the topic is Terminological Controversies in Gifted Education. Yeah. Today we have 3 speakers. Let me introduce you our speakers first. I am Ching-Chih Kuo from National Taiwan Normal University. And I'm also the chair of this organizing committee. So welcome you very much. Yeah. And the second speaker is Professor Uğur Sak. Yeah. Professor Uğur Sak is a professor of special and talented education at Anadolu University. He founded and worked as the director of the Center for Research and Practice for High Ability Education and founded the graduate program in gifted education at the university. Yeah. He is currently the editor-in-chief of Gifted Education International and the founding editor of the Turkish Journal of Giftedness and Education. His scientific research has focused on developing original models and the identification and education of gifted students, assessment of creativity and intelligence. He has been an active participant in social network in gifted education, being an executive board member of the Asia Pacific Federation on Giftedness, and a member of the qualification committee of the European Talent Support Network. I think we are very happy to invite Professor Uğur Sak to talk today. Yeah. And the second speaker is Dr. Pei-Ying Lin. Dr. Pei-Ying Lin is an associate professor in the Department of Educational Psychology and Special Education of the University of Saskatchewan. Hope my pronunciation is right. Work with diverse population of children, youth, parents, in-service and pre-service teachers, university faculty members and staff, as well as testing agency over the years. And Dr. Lin, her research interests include the use of varied research methods, quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods, and experimental approaches for studying instructional and assessment practice and policies for students with special needs, gifted children, and also English language learners. Thank you, Dr. Lin, and welcome you. So, I'm the first speaker. Today, I would like to share you my concept of giftedness. The whole topic of this symposium is terminological controversies in gifted education. But we will share you from different point of view. Yeah. My topic is expanding the conception of giftedness to talent development. So far, is it okay for you to read the slide and hear my voice? Is it fine with you? Anyone tell me? Is it okay?
Okay.
No response. Huh? Okay, so I keep going. Expanding the conception of giftedness to talent development, I think I have to emphasize every child is unique and has strengths and weakness. So it's time to change the rigid concept of giftedness and expand the concept of discover multiple talents. The most important is no longer define intelligence merely as key factor or IQ. The term giftedness has incomparable charm. Most parents can barely hide their smiles and show their pride once their children are labeled gifted, because being gifted is considered a guarantee of smartness, supernova intelligence, outstanding achievement, and prestige in the future, in the university, in their job, in their future work, as Professor Stenberg told us yesterday. He thinks this is transactional giftedness, okay? But how is the truth? If we examine those who performed especially in their areas of expertise, few of them were identified as gifted during school. It is very challenging to tell whether an extraordinary individual who reaps excellence is gifted or not. Yeah, you can see the key features here. I think you know these people, right? And ways to identify gifted, I think it really needs change. It's time for us to change the conception of giftedness. Stenberg's theory of adaptive intelligence reminds community of the gifted education that the traditional procedures to identify gifted need change. We no longer can afford to define intelligence merely through IQ test. And Freeman's research approach also tells us that identification should be cross-based and continuous. Identification should be by multiple criteria, including provision for learning and outcome. Indicators should be validated for each course of action and provision. The pupil's ability should be presented as a profile rather than a single figure. Increasingly more focused criteria should be employed at subsequent learning stage. Recognition should be given to attitudes possibly affected by outside influences, such as culture and gender. The student must be involved in education decision-making, notably in areas of their own interests. Just as Professor Dale Seeger told us yesterday. But I think the most important is that expanding the conception of giftedness to talent development. Sometimes we can find that regulation overrides professional judgment. True, I attended many identification meetings. I always think regulation control everything. They override professional judgment. The high-level standard or criteria of identification prevent students who are not high in intelligence or in aptitude scores from getting into gifted program. So those students, they didn't fit the standard. They lose the opportunity of gifted services. That's really sorry. In reality, the criteria of identify gifted are always decided or affected by the attitude of the education authority. When administrators prefer to expand the gifted population, the criteria are set low and contrary. The criteria are raised if the administrators prefer a smaller gifted population. I don't know if you agree with me. But so many years, I saw the criteria always change and change. Therefore, the same student may be identified as gifted in some years with a lower standard, and may not be gifted in some years with a higher standard. So there is a component of opportunity, of chance, whether you are luck or unluck, lucky or unlucky. Under the fairness principle, usually the opportunity to participate in gifted service is blocked for some potential learners based on arbitrary standard. But we have to ask, what is intelligence? Very earlier in 20th century, Calvin Taylor emphasized that giftedness is not limited to academic talents, but include other ability necessary to cope with real-life situations. The multiple talent model reminds the teachers to see the potentials besides academic performance to build students' self-concept and help them develop many kinds of talents. You can see many kinds of the pillars, different kind of giftedness. He emphasized blooming talents. Enrichment opportunities are important to the future of the twice exceptional. In my experience of offering enrichment learning experience to twice exceptional preschoolers and young artists with autism, some participating individuals who did not meet the criteria for giftedness have performed excellently in their advantaged area in later years. For example, this is an enrichment program for autism students, autism young artists. Yeah, this is a few artists in my program. Yeah. Here is Leland's artwork. Yeah. Leland is very talented. Yeah. His art has been exhibited in many cities and countries. Exhibiting his creations has been placed at our university, National Taiwan Normal University, for students to interact and share class information. So we have a lab house at the Department of Special Education. Yeah, it's truly lovely. This is Xuan. Xuan is best known for detailed illustrative work on traditional architecture of Taiwan's retail station, like street landscape, shops, station, cathedral, and port rickshaws in the 1940s and 1950s. His art shows great interest in both history and social concern. Yeah. Hua Xuan loves to create, and her mother is her biggest fan. Her mother's words are often heard like, I think this work is great. My daughter's fan is coming. One of the reasons Hua Xuan studies in the Department of Art is her mother's ardent admirations. See this artwork. This one is my beloved. Yeah. Little cat in a pool of fish. And where is Hua Xuan? You can see a bird cage here. She say, she hide in this cage. What's the meaning? In her inner heart, she feels so lonely. So every time I can see from her artwork that she needs friends, although they are suffer from autism spectrum disorder. But indeed, in their inner heart, they have friends Here, except developing their talents, we also arrange some depressive art therapy. You can see this is a professor from Department of Dance. Although she retired, she come to play with this young artist. This is her daughter. She is a music therapist. Yeah. And here also teachers from dance classes. Yeah. So every Saturday we play with this young artist, not only learning arts, not only learning creativity, but also we like to improve their social skill through art therapy. We combine their strengths and weakness. During the program, we can see they are really talented. After their music or sport, they draw very quickly. Yeah, you can see their talents. That's Hua Xuan. When she listening to the music, then she drew thoughts. So love music. And this is Xuan. And after dancing, he draw the feeling of dancing. Wow. You see? Yeah. They show their great talents. Although they are not identified as gifted. Every semester, I gave them opportunity to exhibit their achievements. They feel very proud and their confidence, yeah, improved. I always bring them to attend the Gifted Conference. Yeah, see, they attend 20th World Conference. And the newsletter from World Conference say, young gifted artists from Taiwan exhibit at World Conference. Wow, our artists are very, very happy. But limitation of laws and regulations always limited the opportunity for them to develop their talents. Take Taiwan as example. The identification criteria of disabled and gifted students revised in 2006 raised the criteria of giftedness from 1.5 standard deviation above the average score up to 2 standard deviation above the average score. So the gifted education services are currently limited to those students with high intelligence and high aptitude achievement. Under this situation, the twice exceptional learners in the elementary school, the occurrence is only 0.56%. Even more, there were only 376 students identified as twice exception as a 1 to 12 grade level in 2019. Now it's getting higher and higher because we are promoting the programs to develop the learners. For the twice exceptional learners, the individual's giftedness make their disability or their disability mask their giftedness. So the masking phenomenon occurs and challenges the identification process and educational placement of the twice exceptional student. So our K-12 education and the Minister of Education try to change this limitation, but the law hasn't been modified. I think it's time to change the rigid concept of giftedness. Yeah. I don't want to repeat how unique every child. But identify talents in multiple areas will be a lens through which educator can re-examine the current program and identify gaps and areas in need of improvement. There is a model, a multi-level analytic framework from understanding the increasing differentiation and hierarchical integration over time in talent development. Yeah. It is from Professor Pei-Ying. Okay. This model emphasizes a systematic process and adaptation. Level 1 is aptitude and disposition in foundation of domains. Level 2 is characteristic adaptation. Level 3 is a unique human tendency to purposefully initiate and sustain a particular line of talent development. And level 4 is a broader social cultural context to reveal the social cultural mediation of talent development. I pointed out the concept of talent development require systematic process and adaptation. And if you listen to the speech of Robert Sternberg, he emphasized we need to nurture more transformational gifted. Such kind of gifted is more creative, is more with wisdom, is more patient and willingness to stand up for what is right, to take risk and to tolerate failure. It needs courage. It needs resilience in the face of obstacles. It needs belief that ultimately things can change for the better. In conclusion, to bridge the gap of achievement in modern society, I believe the educator will agree that developing different kinds of talents is more important than labeling students as gifted. We need to give more emphasis on talent development instead of identify who is gifted or not gifted. It is believed that additional and joint efforts by all teachers could allow every child to thrive and develop his or her potential. Thank you so much. It's my sharing. Yeah. Now let's welcome our second speaker, Professor Uğur Sak, to share his talk. Welcome, Professor Sak. Professor Sak, are you there? Oh, it's Dr. Pei-Ying Lin. Are you the second speaker? Why? I thought it is Uğur Sak. Is there something wrong?
Okay, my turn. Hi.
Hey, good. Uğur, happy to see you.
My voice is just turned on. It was off.
Oh, now it's normal.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Can I start? Is it my turn?
Good afternoon.
First of all, is it my turn?
Professor Sak, do we need to share your presentation slide for you?
Do you have PowerPoint to share?
Okay, is it my turn? Can I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Okay.
We are waiting for you. You can start.
Okay, here. Welcome all of our audience. Thank you for your patience. You had to wait. And I want to thank also Professor Kuo. The subject of my speech is about the terminological controversies, as Professor Kuo said. In the beginning of my talk, I want to present a couple of hypotheses or claims that I will focus on in the next couple of slides of my talk. First of all, I believe that the field of gifted education needs terminological transitions. I've been telling this for the last 1 year. And gifted education has had stagnation in its terminology. And I will show this how. The trajectory of the label gifted is political. It wasn't scientific, but it is political. The last one is the term. Even the concept, giftedness, is a non-scientific concept, leading to an exclusive and slow motion field. And I will also try to show some examples of this. To discuss, to analyze all of these hypotheses, I carried out some research that was 4 types of research. First, I used Google Ngram search. Google Ngram is a search engine that charts word frequencies or term or concept, whatever you say. Frequencies from large corpus of books from 1500, the year 1500 to the year 2000 or 2019. It displays trajectories of words as they are reflected in printed publications in several languages. Actually, it was only in English, but now it is available for a couple of other languages too. The second type of research I did was a bibliography search. Of course, when I was doing some kind of reading about gifted education in the past, from the past, I also came across Whipple's study. Whipple, in 1919, Whipple published a monograph in English. It is titled Class for Gifted Children. And this work had a bibliography on gifted children that was at the end of the book. It covers almost all major works that was published before 1919, including 1919. And I included 53 of these studies, books or articles in my analysis because they had some labels related to giftedness. The third search was a keyword. I used a major university's database. Excuse me. This database covers 71 worldwide databases and 68 disciplines. I used giftedness and aptitude as keywords in the titles, abstract, and text of the articles published from 1900 to 2021. Last one was dictionary definitions. I searched for the early definitions in three dictionaries before 20th century. Here, terminological translation in special education. As we are brothers, sisters, or relatives in special education, I should say that way. I look at how terms changed in field of intellectual disability. Now it is called developmental delay, and visual impairment, hearing impairment, and gifted. Look at the field of intellectual education for the intellectual disabled. So we will see in the beginning they had terms. They used terms such as idiot, dull, moron, imbecile, and feeble-minded. Later, they transited to mental retardation. From mental retardation to intellectual disability, and currently developmental delay. So there is a clear transition from the very label, social label, to more scientific or educational terms. In the past, the field for blindness used or labeled people blind. Now the field is called visual impairment. Same thing for deaf. Now it is hearing impairment. Actually, there is a deaf culture. They reject this new term, hearing impairment or hearing impaired. They want to use that. But let's look at gifted. It was invented, of course, centuries ago, but became popular in the beginning of the 20th century. But it's still, the name of the field. It's a social label, gifted and gifted. We never changed into in terminology. We never progressed in terminology, actually.
Professor Sak, may I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I see you have 31 slides, but so far I didn't see the change follow your speech. Would you like to share your slides?
You see slides?
Yeah, I see the Farley theory implication. Yeah, I see a slide. So you don't need to use slide, right?
This is you see is what you see. Okay.
What I see is for keynote speech, right?
No, that is wrong.
It's wrong, right? Yeah.
Yes, that is
So
wrong.
you don't need a slide in your talk right now, right? No.
I have something.
You have it. Yeah. So would you share?
I did, but I think there is something wrong.
Yeah, I think so. Or would you like to WhatsApp your slide to me, and then I can share for you?
Wait. No?
But you keep going, okay? Sorry, interrupting you.
I see. Do you see now?
Yeah, I'm seeing you doing something. Oh, yes, good. Yeah, I can see now.
Okay. This is okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. This is the first slide. I presented some, some hypotheses, claims, and then these are the research I did: Google Ngram search, bibliography search, database search for keyword, and dictionary definitions. And this is the third slide. I talk about terminological transitions in special education. In, for example, the field of intellectual disability, they came from idiot, dull, moron, imbecile to mental retardation, intellectual disability, and currently developmental delay. And same thing in other fields of special education. But in gifted education, we see a stagnation in terminology. Nothing has changed yet. Okay, here, the first Google Ngram analysis from 1700 to 2019. Okay, here, if you look at some critical periods in the history, here this scientific revolution from 1500 to almost end of 1600. I compared the trajectories of the term aptitude and giftedness, how they emerged after Middle Age and developed over time to today. Here, aptitude is always up. It was more often used in books than giftedness was used. The first records that I could found about giftedness was that it was used as a term in 1660. That was a publication of alchemy by Paracelsus. Paracelsus did not write in English, but his work was translated in English in 1660. So giftedness as a term first time used in history in 1660 in English publications. But of course, Paracelsus used it before that date. Yes, if you look at 1750, these are around age of enlightenment, you will see a steep rise in the use of aptitude. And then again, this steep rise continues during the first industrial revolution. And the term makes a peak during the second industrial revolution. But giftedness was non-existent during that ages. Of course, the label gifted was invented probably in the little bit after Middle Ages, but the term giftedness was still non-existent here. But because the term aptitude was used during all these ages, there are strong reasons for this. Because all these ages were the development of science, industry, technical skills, and so on. So aptitude as a term was a kind of the term of the scientific, era. But giftedness as a term wasn't the term of that era. Maybe it was used in some cultural practices, such as religious, religious, teachings, but not in science yet. Okay. Let's look at the first dictionary definitions. The label gifted first time appeared in dictionaries in 1731. It was defined as endowed with extraordinary parts. As you see, there is no, reference to any human abilities. Term giftedness appeared first time as a term in Walker's Critical Pronouncing Dictionary in 1830. It was defined as the state of being endowed with extraordinary powers. Again, you see a very general description of the term giftedness. It refers to extraordinary powers. I mean, it can, also refer to any magical power, spiritual power, but not necessarily intellectual ability here. So in 1830, in dictionaries, in 1830, there was still no definition of ability, inclusion of ability in the term giftedness. But in 1849, the term giftedness and the label gifted were first time defined as a superior human ability in the new etymological and technological and pronouncing dictionary of the English language. That was edited by John Craig. This was the definition of the label gifted. Endowed by nature with any power or faculty, furnished with any particular talent. So this last part of the definition is related to what we studied today, furnished with any particular talent. So I accept this date, 1840, as a milestone of the term giftedness, because it was first time clearly defined as a human ability in the dictionaries. And members, my second search was some bibliography. Here, people, in 1919, people published a monograph in English that was titled Classes for Gifted Children. Work had a bibliography on gifted children at the end of the book that covered 124 publications before 1919. I included 53 of these that was published from 1900 to 1919. You might remember that the early 1900s, 1910, 1920, are difficult for the beginning of gifted education. Here, the terms, labels that were used in the titles of the major publications during that period. Exceptional child, that is 9 times. Bright child, 13. Forward child, 1. Gifted child, 6. Genius, precocious, prodigious, clever, intelligent, talented, and supernormal child. As you see, gifted child, the label gifted child, wasn't the favored one. Bright child probably was favored. Exceptional child they used. Precocious child again. So actually, the conclusion for this analysis is that there was no consensus on a standard term that was used for children with high abilities. People used, or scientists, educators used exceptional, bright, forward, gifted, genius, precocious, and so on. Here, another analysis of Google Ngram analysis. We will see the transition in the labels and in terminology. Look at the 1920s here. Let's see. Gifted child, I compared the trajectories of gifted child, precocious child, bright child, and intelligent child. Look at the 1920s. Gifted child is the last one. That was the first, last one. Precocious child, bright child, intelligent child labels were used in more publications than gifted child was. But around the 1920s, something happened, or something started to happen. Gifted child, as you see, steeply rising its use in printed publications is increasing. So in 1920s, the use of gifted child surpassed intelligent child, bright child, precocious child, and it becomes a peak in 1920s. Remember, Thurman, which is the leader of gifted education field, published his first genetic studies of genius in 1925. So I could claim that there is something 1920 effect on the promotion of the gifted child here. Educators, researchers, scientists, politicians, whoever, kind of promoted the use of gifted child for some reasons. I could not find those reasons yet, but I could make some speculations on that. That was mostly political. Yes, I noted here, period was the rise of nationalist fascism in Europe. Right after the World War I, period between World War I and World War II. That was the rise of nationalist movement in Europe. So, excuse me, I make a connection between, this term, gifted child, and some nationalist, the rise of nationalist fascism in Europe. I'm trying to, understand that. And here, continue again. Here we see the rise of the label gifted child. We come to 1940s. Gifted child, the term gifted child goes down, its use goes down. But around 50s, 1950s and 60s, it makes another peak, very big peak. It is the time for Cold War. In 1958, Sputnik 8 or 7, Sputnik was sent into the space. Interestingly, the same year, the major journal of our field, Gifted Child Quarterly, was first time published in 1958 during the Cold War. So, all this be coincidence? Again, as you see, the use of the term gifted child steeply, rose during the 1950s and 60s. That is the period for Cold War. So I see again a political part of the term gifted child here. To support my claims, I also did some ratio studies, not just the frequencies of the terms that were used in publications, but also made some ratio studies. I mean, why the gifted child was preferred over precocious child, bright child, intelligent child, exceptional child, or talented child? Why gifted was preferred by the society or by researchers, educators? In the ratio study analysis, I examined the ratio of gifted child to talented child. To intelligent child, to bright child, and to precocious child. Here we see from the early 1900s, the ratio of gifted child to talented child is, again, here, 1910, early 19 is around here. But in 1920s, the ratio, the gifted child, increases, as compared to the to talented child. So this graph supports the claims or my analysis that I presented in the foregoing discussion or the foregoing slide. And we see the same pattern of increases and decreases. In 20s, the ratio increases, but towards the 40s, the ratio decreases. In 50s, the ratio of gifted child to talented child increases steeply until 1960s. And we see the same pattern for gifted child, intelligent child, bright child, and precocious child. It doesn't move the light. Light doesn't move. The light doesn't move. Sorry, the slide didn't move, so I have to kind of. Finish the presentation, Dr. Kuo.
Professor Kuo, your microphone.
Thank you. Okay, I can see your slide.
Okay, I will go like this. Can you see it? I will go like this.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Here, I was talking about this slide now on here. But the use of the term gifted child and giftedness over the years, we believe, started to decrease. Here, previous slides, I showed you first peak was in 1920s. Second peak, gifted child. The second peak was in 1950s. Actually, it was 1958. Here, I said, this is the fall of nationalist fascism in Europe. In 1920s, there was a rise of nationalist fascism in Europe. In 40s, because of World War II, after World War II, the nationalist fascism in Europe started to fall. Afterwards, the rise of the gifted child started again. So there was Cold War. But as you see, towards the 21st century, the use of the label gifted child has decreased significantly. Like a waterfall, especially starting with 1970s and 80s. of course, there was very big, huge egalitarian movements during 1960s, 70s. So I am not sure if there is an effect of this egalitarian movement on the use of the term gifted child, but we see a significant decrease in the use of gifted child. And probably we will see the same pattern for the term giftedness, because as you see, there's a peak for giftedness. Now it's dropping. It's going down. Just one thing I want to tell about this slide. If you look at the trajectories of the term giftedness and the term gifted education, giftedness starts around 1920s. But gifted education starts around 1970s. The term gifted education is rather new. So it has like a history of 50 years back. The last analysis that I did was a search for database engine. This is the major university's database engine. This database base covers 71 worldwide databases around the world, which includes 68 disciplines. So while searching, I used giftedness and aptitude, two terms. And I looked at how these two terms used in several disciplines. But I combined two disciplines, education and psychology. I combined education and psychology, and I combined the rest of the disciplines, which is, I had 68 disciplines, so the rest was 66 disciplines. I looked at the ratio of giftedness to aptitude. So, in other words, how, frequently giftedness is used in education and psychology to aptitude, and how often it is used in 66 disciplines. So, look at now, this is the formula I use. Number of giftedness divided by number of aptitude. In keywords, in titles, in abstracts, and in text. This is the ratio. This is for education and psychology. This is for other 66 disciplines altogether. Okay, the ratio of giftedness is almost twice larger than ratio in other disciplines. So it is clear that in keywords, education and psychology prefer usually the term giftedness, but most other disciplines do not use giftedness. Instead, they use aptitude. You see a huge difference in titles, almost 6 times, something like that, larger in education and psychology than in other fields. Abstracts and text, you have the same similar pattern. So this table shows that the term giftedness is not preferred, is not popular, is not frequently used in disciplines other than education and psychology. For example, sociology, or anthropology, or engineering, or biology, or physics, or whatever, social sciences or hard sciences. If you look at them, they prefer either aptitude or talent. They don't use giftedness. Indeed, many experts in other fields consider the term giftedness, construct giftedness, as amorphous. It's an amorphous construct, shapeless construct. Okay, as my conclusions, I have a few more to read. Years ago, probably 17 years ago, James Borland claimed the death of giftedness that was published in a book. he suggested education without gifted children. He suggested gifted education without gifted children, meaning that we should provide some kind of enriched education practices for all children, and those who can benefit from this education can transform into talented children. As Dr. Kuo, we discussed earlier, here talent is more important than giftedness. The term giftedness, from my perspective actually, the term giftedness has operated like a gatekeeper. If you have a gatekeeper, foreigners cannot get into your house. So here, experts, researchers, scientists from other fields outside of special education, even gifted education, did not really study giftedness because it was a very special term. It was an amorphous construct, that it was something that they were not interested. So our field, the field of gifted education, has become consolidated, and it has become an exclusive field. So consolidation and exclusive fields, unfortunately, produce replications and replicators. I have no strong evidence, but I should claim that there is a lot of replications and replicators in our field, both research and researchers. And the last conclusion, gifted education needs a terminological redirection from social labels to scientific and educational terms. Some workers cite that the field of gifted education has primarily focused on the question, who is gifted? That is wrong. The field should focus on the question of who wants to develop special aptitudes or special talents. Not who is gifted, but who wants to develop special aptitudes or special talents. Everybody can come. Everybody can come. Everybody can have the opportunity. I want to develop this skill. I want to develop this talent. I want to develop this special talent. So that should be our focus. Recommendations, I have a couple of recommendations. With a terminological transition, we should first enrich terminology by disseminating multidisciplinary terms in education. Unfortunately, we are poor in multidisciplinary terms in education. Dixon suggested, for example, using maximizing learning for gifted education. Mayer and Plucker recently suggested merging excellence for giftedness. But in the last 10-15 years, advanced learning programs have become also popular in place of giftedness and gifted education. Lastly, we can also use high musical aptitude, exceptional aptitude for mathematics, exceptional musical talent, exceptional mathematical talent, or special intellectual aptitude or special academic aptitude. So thank you very much for listening to me. Dr. Kuo?
Mm-hmm.
This is the end of my speech.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Sak. And you have done a very, very good work on clarifying the terminology. Yeah, I appreciate your contribution. And I think we have a common sense that we have to develop more special aptitude and more special talents. Thank you so much.
Yes,
I have to listen to Dr. Lin. Okay, so we welcome next speaker, Dr. Lin Pei-Ying. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Pei-Ying Lin. I'm currently Associate Professor of University of Saskatchewan in Canada. First of all, I just want to say, like, I'm really happy to be here, and thank you for coming to our section. And I also want to give special thanks to Professor Kuo and APCG committee to invite me to as a guest speaker, because I'm so happy to be here as a guest speaker, and then share some of the ideas, the series, and the research I have done over the year with my colleague. So with the time I have, I hope I'm not going to hold everyone for too long. Today I'm going to, because that this the topics of this presentation is symposium, is to looking at the terminology controversy issues in gifted education. So I think that it's really good for me. I want to take the chance to present some of the work, and then also looking into what's the differences between the accessibility, accommodation, modification, strategy, and intervention. Because over time, I have worked, many cohorts of in-services and pre-services teacher in our education programs, and I often found it's very interesting. After a few weeks of discussion, I still have some students. They are teachers, and then they're still confused about this all kind of terminology, and which that kind of the telling us that we might be thinking like, then what's going on when they actually make use of the accommodation for their students with special needs and gifted students and English language learners. So first of all, one of the a very interesting question I often discuss with my students is that they were saying, like, if we was make some change to, our teaching, our assessment, what would it look like to the student? They do not have any accommodation, right? Is that fair for the students? Student in the classroom, they will see some student, oh, they have a special treatment to some of the students in the same classroom. So for those students, they don't, using any accommodation, what do they look, what do they feel? So it's about, when we talk about accessibility and accommodation, it's very over time, we have to looking at what is the equity, right? The equality and equity is a very, very important concept when we talk about accommodation. So one of the, very popular examples I provide to my student is like, when we're looking at this diagram or photo or picture that you will see, there's a different kids with a different heights, and then they want to see the same game, right? But what if, we don't treat everyone the same, right? Because everyone has different needs. With different heights, they want to see the same games. So accommodation, in another way, is that we provide, different boxes. Those different boxes is kind of a metaphor as accommodation or adaptation we provide to the student needing accommodation. It could be student with any special needs or gifted student, just like a Professor Kuo and other presenter. They were saying they're talking about twice exceptional learners in our classroom, in the inclusive classroom setting. So, which means that, I would say why I would like this make use of these pictures is like they actually was, visual ads helping your student understand, no matter they are in the kindergartens, grade 1s or grade 12, they, if you show the picture to them, they can compare. The child will understand the concept, the philosophy behind the accommodation. So they understand what is fair, what is not fair, right? Okay. And what does the research say about accommodations? Here's just, I'm going quickly, as you know, like OECD, they develop all kinds of international assessment, like PISA, TEAMS, you name it. And, for those international assessment, what they found is that the student needing accommodation was increasingly exponentially each year. Okay, so, but unfortunately, the OECD, they recognize this is a problem. But the policy document in terms of accommodation is still, not in place yet, unfortunately. So, and also because of COVID time, in one of the provinces in Canada, which is Ontario, they were saying they was published accessibility accommodation policy that was required teacher to put accommodation in place for online learner, because when the school closed, right, school building closed during the COVID time, the student had to learn online, but still accommodation and accessible adaptations still need to be provided to those online learners. And also in my study, that we often found there's quite a number of gifted children's. Teacher will offer more than one accommodation to them. So which means that they could use like extra time, or they have extra time plus computers, or setting other kinds of different combination of accommodations for them for literacy and math assessment. So here in the next few slides, I would like to go very quickly in terms of series, accommodation series, because I'm trying to do is that over the year I try to do is like bridge the theory and practices, and hopefully that will you will find some like useful to you or your students. This is the model I create for my research, and because when I do working on my research, I analyze and synthesize all the theories and practices, and then I make the model for you. So the first, in this model, I divided into five elements in this theoretical model. So for the first one, for sure, because it's the, as you know, like a student special needs always is something we need to keep in mind, right? That's what we do in education, in special education or inclusive education or gifted education. So the accommodations that should be documented in a student's IEP, they should be used for both instruction and assessment. So in the next few slides, I might give you some example that it's about assessment. But keep in mind, it's also linking to instruction. So the accommodation used for instruction should be consistent with the accommodation for assessment. Okay. So here's, because I feel like within a very short time, it's very hard for everyone to make sure everyone is on the same page. So I will just give you an example, like you have a student in mind. We're gonna have a student in mind, like Jamie, a grade 4 gifted students. What if he has a very short attention span and very easily distracted and has a difficulty tracking one page to another and maintaining his place? Okay. Just assume we have the student, the Jimmy, in our classroom. And for the second element, which is we need to begin with analyzing the target skills. Actually, we need the student to perform for both the instruction assessment. So in other way, we need to kind of analyze what is the goals of our classroom activity and assessment. what we want to do, what we want the student to do. So in this element, it's very beneficial to consider identical accommodation in instruction and assessment. And I also want to highlight that some situations, in some cases, accommodation used for instruction may not be allowed for assessment. What does it mean is that because depending on the purpose of the classroom activities or assignments or exam, teacher may provide some of the adaptation or modification that is not allowed for testing, for assessment. Okay, I can give you a quick example. It's like I have students who will come to me when they, after the final exam, and they don't participate, right? For some reason, for some personal reason, they don't participate. They don't participate class activity, they don't join the class discussion, but they come to me, they create their own rules. What they want me to do is that we just replace, forget about the classroom activity, forget about the participation, let's do, he or she or they want to just submit a very different assignment, okay, for my class, and then get passed, right? So, I would say no, because I understand what is the learning goal of my class. If you don't participate, if you don't join the class, then you don't pass, right? So that's the why we need to understand what is the learning objective and the learning goal we want the student to achieve. So some of the questions for this element 2 is like, for example, we can ask, do students like Jimmy need accommodation to assess math content? Well, math is just an example, okay? You can look at the others as well, other skill as well. Okay, so for here is like, for the math, you were saying, oh, does Jimmy can see the item? See the question? Yes, right. Does Jimmy can listen to teacher's direction? Yes, right? Okay, so what the skills that Jimmy may not have is like, because he has a very short attention span, right? Okay, so that's what we are doing with the element 2. Okay, so next question we might ask, what barrier need to be removed in math instruction and assessment for a student like Jimmy? Okay, and then next, the third component is the concept of validity, because when we are looking into accommodation, it's very important that we looking at special education assessment, but also educational measurement as well, because the accommodation is limited to the change to test instructions or class activities that is intended to support students with special needs. They can demonstrate what they know, what they learned to the teacher, to themselves, but they do not change what the test is intended to measure. So which means is that if we want a student, if because the second elements we looking at, we already analyze the objective, the purposes of the instruction and assessment. So we know for the math, then we will expect Jimmy, he can able to compute computation, right? Perform computation, and then he has mathematical thinking skill and reasoning skill. Those are the target skills we know that we want to see, right? But for the SS skill, which is like, because again, Jimmy has a very short attention, so he has some attention problem. So for this, the third validities the validity elements, we will looking into does the accommodation help maintain the integrity of math instruction assessment for Jimmy? So another quick question, example I can provide to you is that because the math, very often time we want to know what the target skills we want to see from Jimmy is that he can, has a mathematic reasoning, critical thinking, and also will be able to perform computation. But at the same time, because he has a very short attention span, so we will be, be very careful, like what kind of accommodation actually will help us to measure Jimmy's mathematic reasoning, okay, and critical thinking, and to measure his computation math skills. So teacher may be able to provide all kinds of accommodation that will actually help measure those math skills instead of measuring some other skill. It's not directly relevant to this math assessments or class activity or assignments. So for the fourth type of accommodations, according to the series, because there's over the years, there's a different group of researchers that they when they looking into the accommodation, they suggest that there's 4 or 5 major type of accommodation. For example, National Research Council, they was proposed like there's 4 major type, which is including setting, timing, presentation, and response modality. Okay, and for the another very renowned professor, which is Farchi and Farchis at Vanderbilt University, they were proposing again 4 different type of accommodation categories. And for another American flagship institutes, they would suggest there were 5 major category of accommodations. So for this is like, because we're looking at element 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for these models, we want to make sure we match the element 1, which is the student's special needs, and match with the purpose of the instruction and assessment, and also the validity evidence in element 3. And then last one is like teacher will, based on what, or multiple sources information he or she or they receive to determine what accommodation will be most appropriate, most beneficial for a particular student. So the question was saying what type of accommodation can help remove the barrier in math instruction and assessment for Jimmy. Okay, so go for the last one, which is element 5, is to evaluate the accommodated outcomes, because it's very, very interesting because from many of my study, it was just showing that if we're looking at the effectiveness of different type of accommodations, we do see some accommodation actually produce positive effects, but on the other hand, we do see some of the accommodations actually produce negative effects for students with special needs. So that was reminding us that key stakeholders, we will suggest that they go back and revisit the accommodation they use for their students in the classroom. And so the question we would like to ask is, how would teacher and the student like Jimmy, they perceive the effectiveness of the accommodation for math, right? Because the students matter. We want to know what's their perspective, what you know, what's their even like how do they feel about the accommodation? Okay, sorry, going really fast. So here's again going back to the main topic of this symposium is like we try to compare what is accommodation, what is not, right? So for the modification, it's saying like for those you know, any kind of changes, they are not really maintain the test contrast. Then they will consider as modification. For example, I can give you some example here. Like teacher reduced the number of math questions for Jimmy. You know, this is a very common practice my students use, right? But I always tell them like, keep in mind, this is sometimes it's problematic because you don't know the question you take out actually is the important question, right? You take out some question. But those questions, it was actually, you know, those questions actually, it made up a really good assessment. But you take them out, they are not the same, right? Okay, they are not measuring the same skills or ability anymore, okay? Be careful about that. So, and the next question, because for gifted students, sometimes the teacher, you know, other students, other typically developing children, they were expected to address 5 math concept, but teacher might ask Jimmy, because Jimmy is a gifted student, so Jimmy can address 8 concept, but it changed what the student expect to do, right? From 5 concept to 8 concept. So that's a major change. So those changes considered as a modification is not accommodation. And how about the strategy? Strategy is it's a general, I would say, compared to accommodation, it's a very general teaching practices. Like my students, they will say, oh, we give our students body break. We ask the student to do my break, you know, the brain break, all kinds of brain, you know, breaks. They give it to the student, which means that they then children to you know, stand up and then do some body change movements, you know, all kind of exercise in the classroom. So they were saying, oh yeah, that will help the student to, you know, be more attentive. But I will say that's strategy, not accommodation. Okay, because the theory. And some teachers were using like token economy, right, to reinforce the students' you know, desire, behavior in the classroom. Like you know, they become more attentive. They can self-regulate themselves. They don't easily distracted by something else, right? So, but those kind of the, you know, positive behavior support. Those are strategy. And also, my student confused about what about intervention, right? Compared to accommodation, I would suggest that intervention is, you know, a very systematic teaching practices or procedural, very specific program that should be implemented with fidelity, right? So. For example, like the services delivery system, like positive behavior support, PBS, or another example is that teacher was, you know, in a behavioral intervention, which is a daily report called DRC. Those are considered like intervention because they have a different. They teach you this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. What you should do, right, when you implement the DRC for student has attention problem. So those are considered intervention because those intervention programs, they target specific targets like self-regulations, metacognitive skills or attention skills. They teach the student the attention skill, right? But those are not accommodation. I'm hoping that the examples I provide to you help you, because again, it will take several weeks long to understand each of the elements. But here, with the time I have, because of the time constraint, I give a quick overview of based on the theory model I create, and hopefully helping you to better understand what is actually accommodation, what is not, right? What is not, it's like modification, intervention, strategy. They are not the same as accommodation. Okay, they are not. They cannot use interchangeable as accommodations in this very particular research fields. And at the very end, just a side note, because I have ongoing research projects that was funded by the Canadian federal government. We are looking at developing online teacher decision-making program to help the teachers to better understand accommodations for their students with learning disability. But it could be for gifted students as well. So I would just want to send out a message to everyone, whoever is interested, because I am looking for talented doctoral students to join us, be on my team, to work on this ongoing project. Okay. And at the very end, I want to say thank you so much for everyone's attention. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conferences and have a wonderful post-COVID conference and summer as well. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Lin.
Thank you so much,
Dr.
Kuo.
You speak so fast to meet the time limit. Okay.
They tell me that the time is up.
Yeah. So I think you clarify some terminology among accommodation, modification, intervention. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. To my opinion, accommodation means the opportunity to get involved in special education services. Mm-hmm. However, to meet the real needs of the students, it needs us to re-examine whether our test is right, our instruction is under correct way. So it's very important. We need to do more right things and meet the needs of students' needs. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lin, again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we don't have time for people to ask a question. If anyone has any question, please email to us. We are very happy to respond to your questions. Thank you, Professor Uğur Sak, and also Professor Lin, for your talk. Thanks so much. Let's wrap up this session. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.